Welcome to the 8th Annual Accessibility Awareness Days event. The theme this year is, It's accessible, but is it inclusive? I'm Sherry Gagno, Accessibility Manager in the Office of Human Rights, Equity, and Accessibility, and the moderator for the event this year. If you've been following along, you'll know that today we are hosting the third of 5 workshops offered each Tuesday in March. If this is your first time joining, I'll give a brief recap on how the event works. Each week, the presenters will share a 20-minute presentation, leaving time for a short question and answer period. Please type your questions in the chat box during the presentation, and we will address them at the end. If you require closed captioning, look for the 3 dots in the menu bar and scroll to the bottom of the drop-down menu and select Turn on Live Captions. Before I get to introductions, we have been drawing 2 names each week from the list of attendees for a $25 Indigo gift card. Winners are announced the following week. So without further ado, I'm happy to announce the 2 winners who attended last week's event, and they are Sarah Keno from Research and Innovation Services and Dr. Erica Stevens-Abbott from the School of Dramatic Arts. Congratulations, you will receive an email shortly with more details. This week's topic is supporting human-centered design. The presenter this week is Dr. Veronika Mogyorody, who is Professor Emeritus in the School of Creative Arts at the University of Windsor and founder of the Interdisciplinary Visual Arts and Built Environment program in partnership with the School of Architecture, University of Detroit Mercy. Trained as an architect and urban designer, her research has focused on learning spaces, sustainable design, and cultural districts and hubs. She is currently a CTL and Learning Senior Fellow, member of AREA's Accessible Built Environment Committee, and sits on CNIB's Ontario West Advisory Board. As a former academic architectural advisor, Dr. Mogyorody was involved with the design and construction of several campus learning environments, served as past president of the Art Gallery of Windsor, and is a current board member of the Windsor Endowment for the Arts. She's a strong promoter of arts and culture in downtown redevelopment. It gives me great pleasure to turn the presentation over to Dr. Mogyorody.
Hey, great. Thanks very much, Sherry. Well, before I begin, a note of explanation. I will be showing some slides to complement my discussion, but be assured that they are not essential to the presentation and merely here to reinforce what I am saying. Also, generally, when I talk, I speak extemporaneously. People that know me know that. But this presentation has been scripted. So because of the online format, and so I can meet the timelines, bear with me with some of the scripting. Okay then, let's begin. The term human-centered design is often used to describe the process of identifying and addressing the needs and abilities of users within our built environments. There are many of us who are directly involved with shaping the built environment. These include architects, interior designers, engineers, builders, construction managers, project managers. Well, this list could go on. And it is our obligation to help make the everyday life of people as comfortable and functional as possible, no matter what their abilities. With 20% of the population in Canada reporting that they have a disability and 50% having experienced a disability temporarily or as part of the aging process, building professionals have an opportunity and obligation to think of the design process as a method of creating a world that fits an expanding variety of needs. Through design, we can develop supportive environments, products, and systems that help people achieve their goals. We play a critical role in changing the form of our world, how it is organized, and how we interact in it. This is a very serious responsibility. We can strive to make the built environment enabling and possible for everyone to reach their goals, or our designs can result in barriers that must be overcome and require considerable effort. The elimination of barriers is central to the concept of universal design. So before I discuss the principles and goals of universal design, let me talk a little bit about barriers. Barriers are things that limit our choices and everyday actions. They separate us from people and things. They restrict our experiences. They alter our perception and understanding of the world. They make us feel awkward and out of place. They have impact on our sense of belonging in the world, and they influence our feeling of purpose and our ability to contribute. Now, barriers are not always that easy to perceive, but they are certainly inequitable, and they allow the use of space by one person in group and not by another. They can slow us down, divert us, restrict or block us, cause us great fatigue, and limit our choices and opportunities. Barriers are undeniably inconvenient and annoying. They generally cause some form of behavioral adaptation, and they frequently result in complete avoidance because at some point people simply give up. So when you consider barriers, you must also think of them as being socio-spatial constructs. They are negotiated obstacles that express difference between people who is in, who is out, who has access to resources and who is denied them, who is empowered and who is disenfranchised. The experience of barriers is common among most people, but not everyone is able to overcome certain barriers. So they end up restricting our functional independence and our social participation. By breaking down barriers, we allow people to gain access to resources, and we will also move towards ensuring human rights and the provision of social justice. For people with disabilities, the design of the built environment is extremely important because it can either reinforce discriminatory practices of exclusion or neglect, or facilitate social participation and equal opportunity. But the built-in barriers within our environment are not only physical barriers. They are also linked to attitudinal barriers. There is a lack of understanding about how people experience the building as a whole. From entering and exiting the structure, traveling between the spaces and the levels within the building, and knowing exactly where places are. Sure, some of this is covered within the building codes, and we are very fortunate to have them, but building codes do not mean the environmental act addresses all the potential issues associated with accessibility. Codes have tended to focus on mobility issues, spending minimal effort on identifying barriers for people with sensory, emotional, or intellectual challenges. When construction teams build to codes, they are complying with the requirements of the law. But although the building code in Canada has been including barrier-free provisions since 1975, okay? We still find barriers within many new buildings built between now and then. The AAD, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act, has been a major force in consolidating all the accessibility requirements for buildings into one code, and we owe them a debt of gratitude. They've included universal washrooms, barrier-free pathways, adaptable seating, power door operators, and many other long overdue features. But if the only objective of our design teams is to check a box, indicating that they've met the current standards and satisfied legal requirements, then we have no incentive to go above and beyond existing norms and quality and safety. So the best things we can do to increase the integration of accessibility options, besides code enforcement, is encouraging professional education preparation and continuing education programs at universities and colleges. This will highlight to the new generation of built environment professionals that training in universal design is absolutely essential in order to achieve accessibility. Preparing students to be receptive to universal design principles and goals helps facilitate the integration of this type of design process. This becomes part of their solving problem. It encourages the students to become proactive and take initiative within the design of their structures. Now, I'm most familiar with architecture, so I'll use that as my example. But it is my understanding that many other disciplines are addressing issues of diversity and integrating inclusive strategies within the instructional methods. Here are 3 programs that promote increased access through the adoption of universal design. The first, the Center for Inclusive Design and Environmental Access, referred to as the IDEA Center. IDEA is located in the School of Architecture and Planning at the University of Buffalo in New York State. The center focuses on specific design projects, research and development, and education dissemination related to universal design, or what we frequently call inclusive design, and so do they. The second, the Institute for Human-Centered Design, IHCD, founded in 1978. They are home to the New England ADA Center, which provides access to information and training related to disability rights and codes. The IHCD provides education and consultation about best design strategies associated with ability, aging, and human experience. It also engages in the evaluation process of places, products, and services. The IHCD is located in Boston, Massachusetts. And third, the Rick Hansen Foundation, located in Vancouver, BC, one of their highly recognized contributions is a rating system that measures the accessibility of building and sites. The RHFAC gives design professionals a full picture of a building's level of accessibility. Going through the certification process helps organizations, institutions, and design professionals determine how they can improve their built environment. You have to think of it sort of like LEED, L-E-E-D, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. So it's like LEED, but instead for accessibility. The RHFAC is the first program of its kind in Canada. So, as you've probably determined, the focus of universal design is about out-of-the-box thinking and changing the design professional's perspective. It's about creating enabling environments that are ethically responsible and not hostile or damaging to one's social identity and quest for autonomy. It's about offering a better quality of life for a wide range of individuals and creating an equitable playing field. It does not eliminate the need for standards that define the legal baseline for minimum accessibility, but it also encourages people to think creatively and move beyond what is formally required. Now, an example of an early out-of-the-box thinking is Frank Lloyd Wright's 1959 Guggenheim Museum. We usually think of building ramps as strictly connecting 2 levels. But Wright had a really interesting perspective on ramps. He conceived of the circulation pattern within the Guggenheim as one continuous ramp. This is absolutely amazing structure. He thought every museum visitor could benefit by taking the elevator to the top of the building and then easily negotiate around the building, transitioning down to the bottom through the ramp. Everybody taking the same means of access and nobody being distinguished as different. It is important to recognize that universal design is an evolutionary process rather than a final state. There is never an end to the quest for improved usability, health, or social participation. Practicing universal design is not an incremental change, but it is a constant transformation and innovation. Along with creative activities, it extends to learning new things, making new policies, and involving new community supporters. The image I've presented here is the Robson Square steps and ramps. Oftentimes it's referred to as a stramp. It was designed by Arthur Erickson and is located in downtown Vancouver. Excuse me a second, Vito, could you be quiet? I have a partner who's making noise. When completed in 1983, it was applauded for its inclusiveness and integration of different types of pathways accessible to walking and wheelchair users. Now look at this picture carefully, okay? Just think of this. In 2000, and it was originally designed in 1983, and it was thought of as an amazing structure. And then in 2017, local residents started to question the safety of the steps because of their steepness, lack of railings, and inability of the visually impaired to comfortably negotiate the stairs. So here we have an example that as we become more educated and familiar with functional limitations of facilities, we recognize that they must be readapted. So the only thing you can be sure of change, okay? Now, practicing universal design offers a framework that is more compatible within the world. It provides benefits not only to people with varying functional needs, but to society as a whole. It reduces stigma by people with disabilities, and it puts people on an equal playing field with the able-bodied population. So, what are the necessary tools used in the practice of universal design? Where there's two sets. There's a principle of universal design, and then there are goals, and I'll go through each of these. The principles of universal design have several basic features which are supported by the 8 goals. So if you go through these principles, you'll see that each of the 8 goals fits into each of the principles. The first principle, equitable use, it means that the design does not disadvantage or stigmatize any group whatsoever. Flexibility in use. The design accommodates a wide range of individuals, their preferences, and their abilities. Simple and intuitive use. What has been designed is easy to understand, regardless of the user's experience, their knowledge, their language skills, their concentration levels. Perception, the perceptibility of the information. The design communicates all the necessary information effectively to the user, regardless of the user's sensory abilities. Tolerance of error. The design minimizes hazards and the adverse consequences of accidental or unintended actions. Low physical effort. The design can be used efficiently and comfortably and with a minimal amount of fatigue. This is not only important for the user, but for the caregiver as well. Fatigue is a really important thing to think about. Size and shape. This refers to the appropriateness of the size and the configuration of the space, how it provides suitable approach, reach, and manipulation regardless of the user's body size, posture, and mobility. What I'd like to now do is go through the goals here and show examples of how they're achieved back to universal principles. The first 2 goals are body fit and comfort, and they're concerned with accommodating a wide range of body sizes and abilities and ensuring individuals are sufficiently comfortable with performing required tasks. Now, the examples shown here are 3 rows of stacked hand dryers used at the Pittsburgh Children's Museum. This particular space accommodates not only children, it accommodates adults and accommodates individuals with different abilities. It is used all the time and everybody loves this space. The next two goals are awareness and understanding, and they address the needs for critical information being available, unambiguous, and easily perceived. The tactile warning surface that you see here is an easy way to provide information about an approaching street, changes in the grade pattern, and any possible hazards. The fifth, and this is kind of interesting, is wellness, the goal of wellness. It's about maintaining physical and mental well-being and preventing injury. Being connected to nature has been found to support cognitive functioning, especially with physical health, and ensure that everyone has access. So ensuring that you have parks, parkland, walkways that are in grade and that can be accommodated by everyone is really important. This one's one of my favorites. I love this one. This one just won an award. The sixth goal is social interaction, which involves treating individuals with dignity and respect regardless of their personal attributes, and ensuring that they have the same opportunities available to everyone. The creation of Norway's, this is a sightseeing boat, and it's called the Vision of the Fjords, and it was designed so that everybody that entered on this ship would be able to negotiate the ship the same. And so what it is an external ramping system that allows you to go from one level to the other, and it's the same for everyone. The seventh goal is personalization, and this is a hard one for many people with accessibility needs. Personalization is having the chance to choose and make changes to accommodate your specific needs. In other words, having influence and control. With the growth of technology, there are many new mobile apps and fobs available that allow users to interface more easily with the environment's existing infrastructure and give them more personal control. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that says, I have no control over my environment. And this is exclusively really important for most people. And then the final one is cultural appropriateness. It is about respecting the cultural and social values that exist within our community and the environments that it's involved with. And there were a lot of consultations that took place at the Lloyd Library with regards to the collaboratory component and having it and respecting Aboriginal peoples and Indigenous nations. Okay, so now reflecting on what the institutions can do to integrate universal design within their organization, there are a few strategies, and I'll just go through these quickly. We need to adopt a social model of function and ability rather than a medical model. Dr. Veronika went through that the first week, and so we've already had that discussion. Organization leaders need to insist on performance indicators for achieving universal design. The what, when, how, where, all these, they must take that responsibility. The institution must establish inclusiveness as a priority in addressing equity, not something down the list, but at the top. There must be a planned and proactive strategy on how to reduce problems. Accessibility must be understood as a shared task. Everyone in the organization is responsible for this. And there must be resources available to implement the studies, which means things like training, tools, and money. Okay, money is sometimes more difficult. And finally, there must be expertise within the organization to seek assistance. People like Sherry and all the wonderful crew from OREA who are the experts. So, in this last slide, to answer the question posed as the theme for this year's Accessibility Month and all the days, yes, yes, and yes. Yes, by practicing universal design, it can be accessible and it can be inclusive. but it is the responsibility of those involved with shaping our built environment to become advocates, and I use the strong word, they must become advocates, challenging the status quo and using universal design in a way to make our spaces more usable, socially sustainable, and absolutely inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mogyorody. It was just really great to hear how the built environment can have such an impact on who's in, who's out, and how we can improve inclusion for everyone through our design of our buildings. So we have just a couple minutes left, and if you have any questions, you can type those in the chat box. But while we're waiting for people to enter any questions that they might have, I will remind participants that the sessions are being recorded and links will be made available when they are ready. So we do have one question here that's already come in. Wonderful and engaging presentation. Do you have any thoughts on helping local organizations improve and practice universal design, and more specifically as we come closer to or starting reaching AODA in 2025?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. This is a partnership. When you look at it, lots of times thinks that the expert takes the responsibility to change this. This is absolutely not the case. And as I said before, many experts haven't been trained in a particular way. So it's really important that people in the community that experience any issue in terms of they're not able to have access to a particular space or a particular service, or there's a physical attribute that's problematic, these have to be made known to all the agencies within the community. And that's really, I know it sounds like being a pain in the butt, and I know it sounds like being an ag, but it's absolutely essential that we let as many people know when you find a situation that this needs to be attended to. If I could say something, my own lived experience, my mother was in a wheelchair, and I can't tell you how many restaurants in this city I went to, and I phoned to ask if it was accessible. And when I would get there, the threshold to the door, which was 6 inches tall, would not permit her in. So, and I would phone and I would phone. So it's really important that you have to become engaged.
Okay, we have about 2 minutes left, so we have one more question. I think we can squeak this in. What would be your priority for improving universal design on campus?
I think the universal design has started. I think the AREA office is really amazing. I think days like what you're doing here, Sherry, is pretty phenomenal. But I think the students have to come together. This is not just for students associated with AREA, but this is all students in the campus. And there has to be representation on the student governance, on student planning, on facility planning. And I would even say that this has to be included in talking about curriculum. Because as we've indigenized the curriculum and we've looked at different things, we also need to talk about accessibility within the curriculum so that this is normal, okay? I'm using the normal term here, which I don't like, but I'm using it.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Actually, we are out of time. There's just about a minute left, so I'm going to start wrapping up. But thank you so much, Dr. Mogyorody, for sharing your time and your expertise this morning. And I want to thank everybody who's attended and took time to participate and be part of these very important conversations around accessibility. We all have a part to play. I also want to recognize PAC and their ongoing tremendous support to making these events run smoothly and all the pivoting we've done over this past year. So join us next week to hear Nick Baker from the Office of Open Learning discuss accessible online education during the pandemic and beyond. Thanks, everyone.